I'm Helena Humphrey. Good to have you with us. We begin with breaking news out of the White House, where US President Donald Trump has signed tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico and China, America's top trading partners. Now, a 25% tariff is imposed on Canadian goods, with a 10% levy placed on Canadian oil exports. Mexico has been slapped with a similar 25% tax. President Trump has also placed a 10% tariff on all Chinese goods coming into the United States. Well, the White House says that the tariffs are meant to, quote, hold China, Mexico and Canada accountable for the flow of undocumented immigrants and fentanyl into the United States. The tariffs are set to come into effect on Tuesday. That's according to the administration. Well, Canadian officials are decrying the Trump administration's move in statements online. Ontario's Premier Doug Ford said that the tariffs will, quote, hurt America, writing that Canada now has no choice but to hit back and hit back hard. Meanwhile, China's Ministry of Commerce repeated its earlier message of caution that there would be no winner in a trade war. And Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has yet to issue an updated statement, but she has previously said that she would approach tariffs with a, quote, cool head. Well, joining me live now to talk about all of this is Arturo Saracan, who formerly served as ambassador of Mexico to the United States from 2007 to 2013. Welcome to you, Ambassador. Thank you for being with us. Mexico, of course, one of the United States' closest trading partners. So what impact do you think 25% tariffs would have on that relationship?
Well, Helen, it's actually the first trading partner now of the United States for almost 2 years in a row. This is in soccer terms, it's an own goal, but if you want it in American parlance, it's a self-inflicted wound, because these countries, Canada, Mexico, and the United States, these supply chains that have become so integrated, vertebrated, will have a profound impact on inflation, on the well-being of U.S. households. There's an estimate that these tariffs, if they remain in place for over a month or so, will start costing each U.S. household $830 in extra taxes.
So do you think there is a way back from this? We know that the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has said that she's essentially got a plan up her sleeve, but she will act with a cool head. So what do you think could come next from Mexico?
Well, I think it's hard for either Canada or Mexico not to respond in kind with some form of countervailing duties. I think that a generalized countervailing duty or tariff from Mexico would not be a good idea, again, because what you want to prevent is by disrupting your own supply chains, elevating inflation costs, cost of living for Mexicans. But I think some form of countervailing duties will be levied on the U.S. The big question mark here, obviously, is whether this is a negotiating tactic. There are some, included yours truly, that believe that some of this is to force an early renegotiation of the USMCA, which is up for a review in 2026. Canada, Mexico, and the United States governments need to sit down in July of 2026 to review how USMCA has been working. And the sense some of us have is that this may be beyond the linkage to fentanyl, immigration, the bluster and the threat, and be able to prove to his constituents that he has kept his promise. There may be an attempt to force an early renegotiation of USMCA.
So how effective or not do you think that could be, as somebody with your diplomatic hat on, when it comes to immigration, but also beyond that, as you've just outlined with that trade pact?
Well, the problem is that if you look at the numbers in terms of immigration flows on the US-Mexico border, they've been the lowest even since when Donald Trump was in the White House in the first time around. Mexico has been accepting the outsourcing of enforcement-driven policies by the U.S., first with Trump, then with Biden. Numbers are at the lowest since the pandemic. And so there's a bit of a disconnect between the rationale for using tariffs to put pressure on Mexico on this specific issue. The fentanyl and organized crime issue, that's a completely different can of worms. I think this is in part Mexico's fault, because the previous Mexican government of Andrés Manuel López Obrador completely gutted and eviscerated collaboration with the United States in the fight against organized crime. And this legacy in terms of what Mexico has been doing, the fentanyl trafficking that we're seeing coming either in precursors or fentanyl pills. This is an important issue, but where I think the President Trump has made a big mistake is on two fronts. Number one, this linkage, creating pressure points by putting pressure using different issues of the bilateral agenda, putting pressure on trade to get something to change in immigration or drug policy in a very, very complex, deep relationship. This is a bad move because it makes things much more difficult to manage diplomatically. The second part is that Washington, the US, is immersed in what I think is the most important recalibration of its foreign policy since the end of the Cold War, which is its relationship with China.
Briefly.
And if that recalibration is going to be successful, particularly when it comes to the economy, to trade flows, it needs Canada and Mexico.
Okay.
And so by slapping on these tariffs, Beijing must be rubbing its hands right now.
Ambassador, briefly, if you don't mind, is there any way back from the brink for either side here?
Well, there might be. I think that there's a bit of a sense that there will be negotiations and conversations in the coming days. Maybe at some point, President Trump can claim that he has achieved his objectives, that Mexico is doing X and Y, that Canada is doing X and Y, and that he is suspending or putting those tariffs on hold. That is a possibility indeed.
Arturo Saracán, who formerly served as ambassador of Mexico to the United States from 2007 to 2013. Very good to get your perspective. Thanks a lot.
A pleasure, Helen.